right, welcome to Computational Combat. I'm Dylan Grayson, joined this week by Connor Protter, because the brains of the Operation Johnny Koppelman is hidden in the shadows, working on the deep, mystical secrets that give us our predictions. Connor, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Back in New Jersey, it's a little bit rainier than I'd like it to be, but it's also a lot warmer. So, who's to complain, right?
Also nice to be out of Wisconsin, given how that state is currently headed.
Yeah. Apparently, we got moved to critically out of control or something like that. It's
Yeah,
awesome. It's great. My adopted state is doing us very proud.
right. They had to add a new level for how bad COVID is spreading in that state.
Yeah, I think we've had more than 1,000 cases a week for 2 weeks straight, or more than 1,000 cases a day for 2 weeks straight, or something like that.
Ugh, yeah, in a state with a population like that, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about COVID because everyone's heard enough about that. We're here to talk about mixed martial arts, and we're here to talk about UFC Fight Night, Rafael dos Anjos versus Paul Felder. So a lot's changed with this card over the past few days. We're going to get into it in just a second. First, just to look back at last week's card. So we looked at the Santos versus Teixeira card. The algorithm spit out only 4 bets. It bet on Trevin Giles against Bevan Lewis. That bet came back as a win. It bet on Brandon Allen versus Ian Heinisch, I believe. Doesn't really matter which way it bet because that fight was canceled due to COVID. It bet on Khalid Taha as a value play versus Raoni Barcelos. So it believed that Barcelos would win, but thought that Taha was undervalued. So it threw the money there just in case the win came through, bet a small amount. That bet did not come through. And then in the most surprising pick in my mind, it picked Andrei Arlovsky over Tanner Boser. I personally disagreed with that, but what do I know? The algorithm was right. So I don't know the exact number of money that the algorithm actually put out there, but did come up quite positive. As soon as I have the exact numbers from Johnny on last week's performance, that's going to be up on the Instagram as well. So bottom to top, we're going to break down this upcoming card. So basically the way this is going to go, we're going to flip my role over to Connor, and I'm going to be Johnny for the day. So I'm going to throw out the fight to Connor. Connor, you tell me how you feel about it, and then I'll tell you what the algorithm says. So starting at the bottom of the prelims, bantamweight, Gravely versus De Freitas.
I know nothing about either of these guys. I'll be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
Bottom of the card, curtain jerker in the pandemic era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those fights where they have some lower name value guys or even regional fighters coming in to fill out the roster because with COVID, it's very difficult to get everyone together. And they seem to be having a card just about every week. So you got to fill everything up. It looks like since we've set this up, they've switched around the bout order a little bit, but we're going to be going with the bout order that we had previously written out. So as far as the algorithm goes, this fight, it believes that Geraldo de Freitas should win. And if you were to do this fight 100 times, it believes that 65% of the time, Geraldo de Freitas should beat Tony Gravely. And it's suggesting that you would bet, if you had $100 that you were willing to bet, it suggests betting $1.56 on de Freitas. We'll see that there are a lot of very small bets on this card.
I will say the one major thing going in Geraldo, I don't know how Brazilian Portuguese pronounces the name Geraldo. I don't know if it's kind of like R noise like a Geraldo, but either way, he's beaten a dude whose name is Rafael Apocalypse, so I'm probably he's going to win this.
Rafael Apocalypse?
Yeah, if you go to his Tapology page, it's probably like Apocalypse or something like that.
Yeah, no, I see it. I see what you're talking about. Well, if we don't know much about these guys, that sounds like a good sign to me. So, moving on, and as we move up the card, we'll have a little bit more to say as these fighters become a little bit more relevant. So, moving up the card, Randa Marcos versus Kanako Murata. Any thoughts here?
So, Randa Marcos has a consistent history of win-loss with like one draw in there. She recently broke that record by losing 2 in a row, which is, I think, a first ever for her. Okay, no, she did it once before where she lost 2 in a row. That being said, Kanako Murata is not really UFC caliber yet, I don't think. She's mostly fought in Invicta. I don't think that Randa Marcos's recent 2-loss skid is due to decline in like ability. So I'd probably take the safe bet on Marcos to break her 2-loss streak.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So the algorithm here actually doesn't even make a prediction. And that's probably because Murata has not fought in the UFC. So the data scraping comes from UFC bouts. So with no previous UFC bouts, there's not much to say there. So I don't know how safe it would be to bet on this fight.
Yeah, I also just would never bet on a Randa Marcos fight. As a
That's
general matter of
fair.
principle.
Very, very fair. All right. Back to men's bantamweight, Luis Smolka versus Jose Quinones.
Good fight. It's gonna be a really good fight. I really really like Smolka. Super rangy striking. Really nice kicks. I mean, he got what was it, the sweet chin music, the super kick or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Got cut from the UFC, came back. I like him. But recently he's been very, very chinny. I think his past few fights, he's had a history of struggling to make flyweight. So he moved up to bantamweight, and he's doesn't really like his chin or power there. And that being said, I think Quinones is very, very good. Most people probably only know him for getting knocked out by Sean O'Malley. But I think he's very well rounded. I think he's extremely good, and I think he's extremely underrated. I think I'm going to take Quinones if I had to pick.
Right, yeah. If you look at Quinones' record, he is 8-4, but those 4 losses, Sean O'Malley, Nathaniel Wood, Alejandro Perez, and then going back from before he was in the UFC, Davi Ramos. So
also, Davi Ramos is a lightweight, right?
I believe he is, yeah.
Yeah, because he lost to Makhachev.
Right. So I'm wondering what weight that took place at. It says Mexico regional, and it is not giving me any information besides the fact that these two fought. I don't know if they fought at like featherweight in the past or
yeah. Either way, I mean, okay, Ramos is built like a brick shit house. He probably didn't make his way down to featherweight, but either way, like, there's nothing wrong with any of those 4 losses.
Right. Exactly. All of those 4 losses have aged quite well, with the exception of O'Malley, whose shin gave out on him again. Doesn't
at the bare minimum, O'Malley losing to Chito Vera tells you that he's a top 15, like below top 10, above top 15 talent. And there's no shame in losing to someone who's in that area, especially against the caliber of opponent like Luis Smolka.
Right. So the algorithm is totally agreeing with you here. It says 62% confidence on Jose Quinones. And as for the bet, it suggests the same exact bet, $1.56 out of a hypothetical $100 that you were willing to bet.
That's actually kind of surprising to me. I would be a little bit more confident in Quinones, probably, at least just based on the past couple Luis Smolka performances.
Right. I don't know.
To the ground.
Yeah. How is Quinones on the ground? I'm not too familiar with him.
I don't know a lot about his ground game, but I think it's reasonably solid, or at least the fact that he's going to be he's not going to be the taller guy because Smolka's extremely tall.
Yeah.
Let me see what they're an inch apart. Quinones actually has longer arms, but like, he is a true bantamweight. He's a thicker guy. He's a stronger guy. I think even if his ground skills aren't as good as Smolka's, he's probably going to be strong enough to keep it off, especially since Smolka's takedowns are only so-so.
Yeah. I mean, the algorithm agrees with you, and I don't have any disagreements. So then moving on, the next one, welterweight, Alex Morono versus Reese McKee.
So Reese McKee is probably most known to a lot of fans from getting just devastated by Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah.
That being said, he's really good. He was, I think, a champion in Cage Warriors, if not just like a consistent like top 5, top 10 fighter. I think that fight did not show how good he actually is. It was like a short notice fight against someone who is ostensibly extremely talented. That being said, I think Morono's not very good. He had an okay streak. He had an okay 3-fight win streak before losing to Chaos Williams, who we'll talk about later. I think it'll be a good test, but I think I'm going to take Reese McKee. I think he's a lot better than the Chimaev fight showed.
That's interesting. So now we have our first disagreement between you and the algorithm. So here it says Alex Morono should be the winner, and it gives it 79% confidence. And I think there's a reason for that. So I'm thinking that, we take data from the UFC. So the only thing that the algorithm is aware of is Reese McKee getting absolutely shellacked by Hamzat Chimaev. So is McKee being significantly undervalued by the algorithm here? It'll be interesting to see. But it also suggests a bet of $2.34 on Alex Morono out of a hypothetical $100 that you would have willing to bet.
Yeah, I think Morono's good. I don't think he's that great of an athlete, and I think Reese McKee is, if the only data that's going into the algorithm is the one fight where he looked utterly horrible and didn't get to throw a single strike, then I don't think that's a great representation.
Right. That's one of those things where sometimes it gets a little iffy. I know in the past we've tried to avoid making calls on anything where there's only one fight in the UFC on someone's record, but this card has so many of those fighters. We would really have not much to talk about if we didn't do that. But I see the logic here for disagreeing with the algorithm, but once again, we will see. So then moving on, what we have listed as the last fight on the prelims, there may have been a little bit of shifting according to topology, but back to women's strawweight, Ashley Yoder versus Miranda Danger Granger.
So I don't know a lot about Granger. What I do know about Yoder is that she's relatively inconsistent. She tries to focus on a ground game, if I remember correctly. I mean, her nickname is the Spider Monkey, which great nickname. But she has losses to people like Brandon Marcos or Mackenzie Dern, Angela Hill, Justine Kish. I don't know what Miranda Granger's ceiling is, but I think it's probably higher than Ashley Yoder's.
Right, and I feel similarly on a personal level, but again here, and I'm not sure exactly what it's seeing, but the algorithm is taking Ashley Yoder, but the confidence here, 58%. That is almost a dead even call. That is barely leaning towards Ashley Yoder here, but it does suggest that bet of $1.56 out of a hypothetical 100 that you have that you're willing to bet. That's a very, very close call in terms of this algorithm. You don't see much lower than that.
Yeah.
So we will see. And then moving on to what seems to be the main card, barring any of these shifts around, still at women's strawweight. So Kay Hansen versus Corey McKenna.
I don't know either of these fighters.
So do you want to feel bad about yourself? Because let's feel bad about ourselves. Kay Hansen and Corey McKenna are both 21 years old.
Oh, I feel terrible.
Right. We sit here as two 23-year-olds.
They shouldn't be allowed. They're too young.
Yeah, we're not going to be working real jobs till we're 26. We're still in school, and these people are in the UFC. These two women are in the UFC. I know there was a lot of buzz around Kay Hansen. Kay Hansen actually already has a win in the UFC. That was in June. She faced Jinyu Frey, who was another Invicta call-up. So the algorithm here is the algorithm even making a pick? No, the algorithm doesn't even make a pick here. This is one where I think the most important thing about this fight is getting eyes on it and seeing where these two are headed in the future, because 21 years old and already in the UFC, both of these girls have a good chance of becoming something big in the next few years. But yeah, I don't personally know too much. The algorithm's not even making a call.
Especially if this is the fight that's open, that's the curtain jerker for the main card. They definitely want to just get eyes on.
Right, absolutely. Then moving up to middleweight for this next one, Antonio Arroyo versus Eric Anders.
So, Eric Anders, man. Yeah, boy. He always has a lot more wins than I expect. I don't think he's particularly good, especially with how he's been bouncing between light heavyweight and middleweight. That being said, Arroyo is a relative newcomer to the UFC. It looks like he's had one fight that was a loss. I don't think very highly of Eric Anders in terms of being a fighter, but I think I trust him to get the job done against a relative newcomer. He's extremely athletic. I think he was college football, right? At Alabama.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know he was a football player.
Okay, yeah. But he's like reasonably athletic. He's strong. If he does get the chance to hurt you, he will hurt you badly. I think I trust him to get the job done well enough.
Okay, so the algorithm here is actually picking Antonio Arroyo, but very close margin here, 55% confidence. That's relatively close to a wash. And in terms of a bet, if you had $100 that you were willing to bet, the algorithm is telling you to bet 78 cents here on Arroyo. So
I don't disagree. Like I said, I don't have a lot of confidence in Eric Anders. I'm picking him because he's the more experienced fighter. He's the veteran.
Right. Yeah. He's the veteran. He is athletic and strong, but he's not consistent.
Yeah. He's not consistent, and he doesn't really seem to know how to improve on his skills fight to fight.
Yeah. So 195 pounds catch weight here. Brendan Allen versus Sean Strickland.
Good fight. It was a really good fight. I think Strickland like literally fought last weekend or something.
It was Halloween, so it'll be 2 weeks to the day between his last fight and this one.
Man, that's short notice turnaround.
Right.
I like Strickland. I think he's been fighting forever, hasn't he?
He's been fighting for a while, but he's been gone for a while as well. He had a really bad motorcycle accident in 2018, kept him out for 2 years, came back a little under 2 weeks ago against Jack Marshman. Looked very good, and I guess he doesn't want to take more time off. He had plenty of it, and because he doesn't have much time to make weight again, he's paired up with Brendan Allen, who was supposed to be on last week's card against Ian Heinisch. Ian Heinisch got COVID. Brendan Allen didn't have a fight. Sean Strickland wanted to fight again. They're in the same weight class, so they put them together, and they allowed them 10 extra pounds of weight.
Yeah, Strickland's good, but I also think that I'm probably going to take Allen if I had to pick. Allen is like a super legit prospect. I mean, if you go through his Tapology page, the two names that really stick out to me, honestly, are Kevin Holland, who everybody loves, and Tom Breese, who for a while was considered to be one of the next big things at middleweight. Allen, very aggressive. He's got an extremely good and extremely submission-oriented ground game. If I had to pick someone, I'd definitely take Allen, especially not knowing truly how good Sean Strickland's going to look coming off a long layoff and a quick turnaround. Marshman is a good fight, but I don't think Marshman is the level of competition that Brendan Allen most likely is going to be.
It's funny to hear you say coming off of a long layoff and a quick turnaround. But it's accurate. He spent 2 years without fighting. He comes back, gets one win, and then he's got a quick turnaround. So it seems like there's not much ring rust for him, or cage rust, I guess. But, I have to agree with you on a personal level. I think Brendan Allen looks great. Kevin Holland is surging. He's faced a lot of last-minute replacements and regional guys, but Kevin Holland is looking very good lately, and Brendan Allen choked him out. And this kid's 24 years old. He's got a lot of room to grow. I see him taking it, and the algorithm does as well. Tight margin here, though. Once again, 57% confidence on Brendan Allen, and with that, only suggesting a 31-cent bet. So basically, the algorithm has just the littlest inkling that Brendan Allen should win this. Sean Strickland looked good in his last fight, but I also like Brendan Allen.
Yeah, I also just like Sean Strickland has only ever lost to people who are super good. I mean, I remember back when he was fighting Kamaru Usman, and the question was not how will Usman run through him, but which of these two like super legit hyped up prospects is going to be the next one to break through the rankings. Like right. I remember back when that was who Strickland was, and like his losses are Santiago Ponzinibbio, Usman, and Zaleski dos Santos.
Yeah,
super legit losses. So I can definitely see why that's a tight margin.
Yeah, he hasn't been beaten by anybody that isn't now at the top of the welterweight division. So On to the next one. So this fight may have actually been moved down to the prelims. Different sites are saying different things, but this is at heavyweight. Dantale Mays versus Roque Martinez.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about Roque Martinez, and honestly, I only know Dontel Mays for getting, I believe, heel hooked by Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane. I don't know how people have decided to start saying.
I've heard Gone, but also how long were people saying Francis Gano? So I have no idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair enough. I think I, at least just looking through people's records, knowing that obviously records don't tell the full story, but I probably would want to take Martinez in this, just based off of their records. Martinez is a lot better competition and had wins against it comparatively.
Yeah, neither of these guys has a win in the UFC yet. So
yeah, Dontel Mays held his own for a little while against Cyril Gane, if I remember correctly. But there's a distinction between holding your own and looking okay in a loss and actually winning a fight.
yeah. So taking a look here, I don't believe the algorithm even made a call on this one. Yeah, it's one of those fights. Hopefully, it'll end up being an exciting fight. You've got two heavyweights that are hungry to get their first win, but not much in terms
of action-packed.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I can't put too much weight into this fight. Neither can the algorithm. So moving on to middleweight. So we've got Julian Marquez versus Safirbek Safarov.
Yeah, Safirbek Safarov is not great. Marquez, I think he had a long layoff before this fight, right?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen him coming around in a while. He's the dude. Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember that nickname.
Yeah, so he had an excellent showing on Dana White's Contender Series. And then since then, it's been, let's see, it was one win in the UFC against Darren Stewart, a loss to Alessio Di Chirico, and then a 2-year layoff.
Yeah, I don't remember why he had the layoff. I don't remember if it was injuries. I know it wasn't steroids. But either way, I think Safarov is someone who can be very stubborn and very insistent, but I think Marquez probably has a higher ceiling.
Yeah, looking at each of them, so Marquez is 1-1 in the UFC, and one of those wins is over Darren Stewart. And then Safarov is 1-3 in the UFC, and his only win is against Nick Negumereanu.
You're braver than I am. I wasn't even going to attempt the name.
Right, I don't think that I'm particularly good at pronouncing names, but when I know a fighter and I've heard it enough, I feel like I can pick up on it. And the fact that I have no idea how to say this probably tells me that I haven't seen much of him. And I mean, sure enough, I haven't. One fight in the UFC and just the loss to Safarov. I think that Marquez has the more impressive win in the UFC by far. And so you're calling Marquez. I'm calling Marquez, and Marquez is the largest favorite of the night, according to the algorithm. 82.8% confidence. That is very, very high. And along with it, a bet 1.56% of the fund. So if you had $100, it's telling you to bet $1.56 again.
Yeah, I don't know if I would be that confident in a dude who's coming off of a split decision loss and a huge layoff. Especially, If Safarov is the person I'm thinking of, he has a tendency to cheat a lot in fights, and that can cause momentum swing. Also, he's a former light heavyweight who's now coming down to middleweight. So maybe there's something to the size advantage or power differential there. But I'm going to take Marquez. I don't know if I'd be that confident in him, though.
Yeah. I personally like Marquez as a pick. 82.8% confidence is very high. We will see. So, moving on to the co-main event and a very interesting fight. Welterweight, Abdul Razak Al-Hassan versus Chaos Williams.
So, Chaos Williams I believe his only UFC fight is knocking out Alex Morono. Said he'd come back. Whereas Abdul Razak Al-Hassan, history of knocking dudes dead before coming up against I was hoping that I could remember his name. I need to look it up.
Minor Lazez.
Yeah, before in his most recent fight, he kind of couldn't put his opponent away. Got himself gassed out against Munir Lazez. Um, in terms of who I think is more likely to win this kind of a fight, uh, with someone who has an insane amount of power like Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and even though he did fade, his power did kind of stay more or less for a few rounds, or at least for moments in each round. I think I'm gonna pick Al Hassan. I hate picking people just based off of insane knockout power, but that dude hits like a truck.
Right. I think both of these dudes hit like a truck. The algorithm here, let's see, did the algorithm even make a pick? No, it looks like the algorithm didn't make a pick on this one. And I think I have a reason why. The entire UFC career of Chaos Williams has been 27 seconds thus far. He walked in, he knocked someone out. So all of the data there, strikes landed per minute, everything that he did do in that fight, which I don't think there was a takedown or anything. I think it was just strikes. 27 seconds in, knocked him out. I have a feeling that the algorithm didn't like the way the stats were. It felt that the stats were not actually indicative of much because there was such a small sample.
To reach the key Chimaev fight.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why the algorithm would actively make a pick on that one and not here.
It's probably the time duration. Didn't get enough of a feel.
Right.
But either way, I think if you're dealing with two dudes who can hit hard and knock people out in like less than a minute, I've seen Abdul Razak Al Hassan do it against a lot more people and a lot better people than I have with Chaos Williams because he only did it to Alex Morono.
Right, that's fair. Although, if you actually look back at the record, obviously Al Hassan did it to Nico Price, which is very impressive. But, he did it to Sabah Hamasi kind of twice. He knocked out Sabah Hamasi in 2017 in December, and there was a lot of controversy over it because it looked like Hamasi was really just diving in for a takedown, and the referee mistook it for a knockdown and called it. And then they rematched that fight, and then no question the second time around, Hamasi got knocked out. And then you had the win over Nico Price, and then he was off for 2 years with legal troubles. Not to dive deep into it, but he was accused of something extremely heinous, and he was found not guilty, and that's why he's back in the UFC. But certainly leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. And then his return was a loss, so you have to wonder, is his gas tank affected by maybe not actively training as much? But that was also now 2 full months ago. Is he back into training full time? I would assume so. Yeah. All right, main event time. By far the most interesting fight on this card. A lot has gone on here. What was supposed to be a lightweight bout between Rafael dos Anjos and Islam Makhachev is now a lightweight bout between Rafael dos Anjos and Paul Felder. So Rafael dos Anjos is the number 12 ranked welterweight fighter coming back down to lightweight, former lightweight champion. And Paul Felder is the number 7 at lightweight, who was supposed to be on commentary for this card and said, fuck it, I'm in. And on 5 days notice is not even asking for it to be at a catch weight. He's going to try and make weight in that time. What are your thoughts?
I love Paul Felder, man.
Oh, he's great.
He's just a fucking beast.
He's so genuine and so fun. I'm not sure if you remember, somebody called him out on Twitter and said, you're a much better commentator than you are a fighter. You should retire from fighting. And he said something along the lines of, that's not nice, man. Would you say that to my face? And the person responded, absolutely not. You'd kick my ass. And Felder responded, fair enough. Felder's just...
He's a funny dude.
He's funny and absolute top-notch gangster move to step in on 5 days notice from the commentary desk.
He is most certainly the toughest theater major I've ever seen in my life.
Was he a theater major in college?
That's why he does commentary. He was going to go into acting and just started fighting.
Wow. That's fascinating.
He went to Drexel, I think.
Interesting. I know he's from Philly.
Yeah, let me
That's
the things his fighting ability, but I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Right. So
No, I'm sorry, the University of the Arts.
Okay.
Either way, I love Paul Felder, which is why it breaks my heart to not pick him. The question for me in this fight, and man, I hope I eat crow on it, but the question for me in this fight is not whether or not Paul Felder can beat RDA. The question is how much RDA is going to beat Paul Felder. Uh, I think RDA is super good. He's extremely legit. He was a world champion at 155. He only moved up because he was struggling to make, which I don't know why he's moving back down. Weight cutting is a bad thing for the sport, but he was a top contender at 170. His losses at 170 are to Kamaru Usman, the champion, no shame in that, to Colby Covington, fuck Colby, but no shame in losing to Colby in a fight that was extremely competitive, and some people view him as having won. Lost to Leon Edwards, which no shame, Leon's super legit, and then a loss to Chiesa, which has its caveats. I think RDA is going to do something dirty to Paul Felder. He kicks extreme. His leg kicks are excellent. His body kick is excellent. He's very consistent at pressuring. He's extremely strong. He's well-rounded pretty much everywhere. The things that Paul Felder does really well, in addition to his insane durability, are that he's extremely good in the clinch. He's lethal there. And he's got very, very good grappling. He's strong. And he hits like a fucking truck. But I don't know how that's going to come into play because I think RDA is just too good at shutting down those types of areas. So I'm going to pick RDA with a few caveats. One, I don't know how RDA is going to look coming down in weight when he like passed out like right before the fight against Eddie Alvarez, if I remember correctly, which was he got knocked down and moved up to 170.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that the original fight with Islam Makhachev was supposed to occur back in October. RDA got COVID, so they pushed it back to November, and then Felder steps in for Makhachev. So does COVID affect him? Does the weight cut affect him? Does overtraining for an extra month affect him? Not to mention, I believe Paul Felder was not actually actively training. I think he was doing either like an Ironman. I'm showing how little I know about running sports. He was either doing the Ironman one where they run really hard, or a triathlon or something insane. He wasn't like actively training fighting. Does that affect him?
Right. So there's a whole lot going into this. What's interesting, obviously, RDA gets COVID. They push the fight back. He's good to go now. And then Islam Makhachev gets the mumps. So this is a fight that's been affected by viruses over and over again. And then you've got the other things that factor in. Paul Felder was training for something athletic, but not fighting. Is he going to be ready to make weight in time? How much is he going to drain himself trying to make weight in 5 days? Then the other thing about it is RDA was training for a wrestler, and he struggled the most against wrestlers in recent times. And Paul Felder is a lot more of a striker than Islam Makhachev is. How much does that change things?
Paul Felder is much more of a striker, but I think the strongest aspect of Felder's game is still his grappling. I think in general, the fights where he's able to make it super dirty, get into the clinch, throw elbows, those are the ones where he makes the biggest difference versus his opponents. So it'll be a different style of training, but I don't think it's going to be overwhelmingly different, especially not if RDA feels confident wrestling and wants to take Paul Felder to the ground. RDA he's like a BJJ black belt. He's insanely talented.
Right. And then the other thing is Paul Felder coming off a loss, but it was a split decision loss to Dan Hooker that was very close. And Paul Felder really is excellent. If that split decision had gone the other way, he'd be top 5 right now at lightweight. So this is a really fun fight. I almost feel like this fight is better with Paul Felder than it was with Islam Makhachev.
I like Makhachev. Makhachev has been stuck to fighting unranked people and no names. We need to see him against top competition. I really wanted to see him against RDA.
I was fascinated, and I thought it would have been a great fight, but I am extremely hyped for this one as well.
I think the only other thing which is of interest is I don't think that Leon Edwards and Paul Felder fight too similarly, but they both really, really like controlling the clinch and using a lot of elbows in the clinch. Leon Edwards fucked RDA up pretty badly. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, he tore a gigantic gash over RDA's eyelid with one really nicely timed elbow. It would be curious to see if Paul Felder can do something similar. But as it stands, the people who have recently beaten RDA are extremely powerful grapplers, extremely powerful wrestlers, who are also massive compared to him. RDA is a short, stocky dude who was fighting at welterweight. I don't know if Paul Felder can replicate that.
That is fair. So, looking at the algorithm, tight call here, 57% confidence in Paul Felder, the algorithm picks. And it says to bet $1.56 out of a hypothetical 100 that you have set aside for betting. It's an interesting one. The most interesting thing to me is the algorithm has no way to calculate for a late notice fight. It doesn't have any way to quantify the fact that Paul Felder is going to be cutting weight hard. So I wonder how that will play in. Once again, 57%, that's a very, very tight margin.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the weight cut for Felder. He's an insanely tough dude every single time he faces adversity. Oh my god, I don't know why I couldn't say that word. It's been a long day.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah, but every time he faces adversity, he kind of just pushes through it. Like, I remember routinely throughout the Dan Hooker fight, he was getting blasted in the beginning, and every single time he would eat a leg kick, his face would just get red, and he would put on a really grumpy face and would just push through it. Like, unless he has, like, the world's worst weight cut, cough, cough, RDA, I don't think it'll affect him. He's fine. Plus, he's a muscular dude. Muscle holds more water than that does.
There's a lot that goes into this one. I think that this is a very interesting fight because of all of the outside stuff, as well as because of who these two guys are. But there you go. There are our picks, both the picks of a obsessed MMA fan, to say the least, and the picks of a computer betting algorithm. So we'll see what happens and get back to you after Saturday night.